All right, joining me is Kristen Mirabella, head of partnerships at Eaglebrook, who's a crypto investment platform that provides registered investment advisors with direct access to digital assets. So I would say in a nutshell, they allow financial advisors to manage crypto assets on behalf of their clients using separately managed accounts. And we'll get into all of the details here. And I would say, even if you're not a financial advisor, which I know a lot of you aren't, I think you're going to find this conversation interesting because, in my opinion, this entire topic clearly speaks to the further institutionalization of crypto. But Kristen, it is so great having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Okay, so did I accurately describe Eaglebrook there in my intro?
I was just thinking you should join the team because you're exactly right. We are a crypto investment platform built with and for financial advisors. So you're completely correct. You're able as an advisor to invest in crypto directly using our technology and on behalf of your client, and also have the benefit of direct reporting feeds as you'd expect for many other asset classes. So.
And give us a sense as to either the type or how many financial advisors you're currently working with. What does the average advisor look like?
So we're working with over 84 RIAs and over 700 financial advisors. And to be honest, I'm seeing a wide range of type of advisor, mostly RIAs, as we know. We'll see some time before the wirehouses and other large wealth management firms are able to jump in, mostly for infrastructure reasons. There's a lot to figure out when you consider custody and technological overlays like in Eaglebrook and what that will mean for those firms. So yes, RIAs only pretty much at the moment, but it's great because these are the types of firms you'd expect to be able to provide this type of flexibility to their clients. Where a wirehouse might be offering ETFs at the moment only, these RIAs and working with Eaglebrook now have the ability to offer both that indirect and direct option when they consider allocating the crypto for their clients. So RIAs of all sizes, I'd say the majority are running from about 100 to 500 million all the way up to 10 and 20 plus billion. So really any firm that's been able to wrap their arms around crypto at this point.
And I think we hit the headline in terms of what Eaglebrook does, but from a financial advisor's perspective, I'd love to have you just explain in a little more detail, like the basic problem that you're solving here.
So I think about it in terms of how you're investing in crypto. On one hand, like I mentioned, you've got indirect assets, or rather wrappers. You've got your ETFs, and right now those are available for both Bitcoin and Ethereum. Great options. The emergence of those ETFs has done a lot for the industry, and especially, as you mentioned, pointing to the institutionalization of this space and what it's meant for the likes of BlackRock, other custodians who are participating. They're great. They're a great tool. What Eaglebrook has been able to do is say, great, you don't want just indirect exposure. You actually care about holding the actual assets in your client's name. You want to hold Bitcoin, ETH, a variety of other assets in a segregated wallet like you would for any other SMA. You're able to do that through this technology. And what that allows you to do is, three really interesting things. One, take advantage of holding it directly. So if you're trying to grow your assets, if you're trying to grow your practice and you know that you have clients who have crypto, you're able to transfer those assets in kind, say from a Coinbase account, crypto.com, Robinhood, Gemini, whatever. You're able to transfer it from those wallets directly into these managed Eaglebrook wallets, and it's immediately available under your purview. So number one, direct holding. Number two, the ability to diversify. So if you have a client who is interested in anything beyond the realm of just Bitcoin and ETH, say you're choosing Gemini. We work with two custodians, Gemini and Anchorage at the moment. If you're choosing Gemini, for example, the assets you have at your disposal are any of those assets available at that underlying custodian. So anything that's available on Gemini's availability list. So diversification on top of being able to customize a portfolio for your client. Say they like Solana, you can add that manually. You can also choose one of 3 or 4 third-party managers. They're working on a variety of different models that you can access through our portal. ARK Invest, Franklin Templeton, Bitwise, Exos. So if you're really looking to gain exposure to something that's touching DeFi more, and you don't necessarily have the time to do the research on what's going on with decentralized exchanges or decentralized staking, give the Bitwise crypto category leaders a shot. So you've got some really interesting choices that you can make here, all that feel like a traditional option, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And most compelling, I think, when you consider why direct, um, tax loss harvesting. There's no wash sale rule in crypto right now. So owning it directly here means that our automated tax loss harvesting technology will take the underlying asset, Bitcoin and ETH for now. Once it dips below a specified threshold that you're able to make when you onboard a client here, it will automatically sell and repurchase that asset within 60 seconds.
Okay, there are several things. Yeah, I want to unpack several things. Or no, this is
Sorry
really
to
interesting.
ramble.
First, I want to go back just to the basic, what I'm going to call onboarding process. And let's say I run an advisory firm where I'm primarily custodied with, let's say, Charles Schwab
Mhm.
with my clients. And I have a client that comes to me and they have crypto assets, say with Coinbase, as you mentioned, and they want me to manage those assets. What happens next? Like, how does an advisor actually work with that type of client?
So what's really cool is the movement of crypto or digital assets on chain is pretty straightforward. And we like to think that we make it even easier. So let's say they have their Coinbase account, and step one is the client navigates within whatever respective portal they're working from, and they would initiate a withdrawal of crypto from that account. You have to provide a destination address for that crypto. And you, as the advisor, you're logged into your Eaglebrook portal, you've got that client account open. There is a destination address that you're able to copy and paste to provide to them. You're also able to initiate an email that would go directly to that client with that same deposit address. And what they're going to do is use that address as the destination in that Coinbase interface, and they'd be able to just send those assets directly to that address, which is affiliated with their Eaglebrook account managed by their advisor.
Sounds a lot more streamlined than the typical account transfer process that advisors deal with at places like Charles Schwab.
It's true, which is one reason crypto is really exciting in general, and in the future, other tokenized assets. Maybe the traditional and more institutional structures will add some more red tape to the equation, but for now, movement of that existing crypto is really straightforward.
And then in terms of data reporting, when I think about things like performance reporting, client reports, I'm assuming that Eaglebrook integrates with existing portfolio accounting software that advisors may have. Is that correct?
Exactly correct. Right now, we're directly integrated with Orion, Adapar, Black Diamond. And if you have another that you're working through, we can easily facilitate connectivity there. But those are the platforms where we're already set to go, and just providing your client account number to them allows you to start streaming that data as soon as you're onboarded.
And you touched on this, but you currently custody with Gemini and Anchorage. And just to be clear, any crypto assets that are available on those platforms would also be available to the advisor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then with the SMA strategies, obviously an advisor can fully customize their own strategy. But you mentioned these third party managers, and I thought it was really interesting just in perusing your website. And you noted these Franklin Templeton, who I actually had on the podcast last week, ARK
Nice.
Invest, Bitwise, Arbor Digital, Exos. Tell us more about those strategies.
So what you'll see are a variety of actively managed strategies. And that's what's neat in contrast to the custom strategies. There is no more or less automatic rebalancing tool. You're going to do the customized strategies a little more manually. So as I mentioned, if you're looking for some more in-depth coverage of the crypto space, if your client's interested in reaching beyond the Bitcoin and ETH universe, um, working with one of these managers means that on an actively managed basis, they are digging a little deeper into the crypto sphere. And I think I mentioned it earlier, just using them as an example for Bitwise, they have their Bitwise 10 index as one of the SMA strategies here. And so you'd expect, a high market cap, really interesting coins available. They actively rebalance that strategy monthly. And it's how much time are you saving by allowing a crypto native manager to do that legwork for you? That strategy is still going to be 70% Bitcoin and ETH, but you're still able to use them for dabbling on the, kind of altcoin range of what people are most interested in right now. There are many other strategies that are actively managed that do just contain Bitcoin and ETH at the moment. But I do think it's taking some of the legwork out of you actively rebalancing it or deciding what percentage weight you want each to have. So I think there are a lot of benefits to taking a look at, one of these managers and what they've, let's call it what it is. They've decided to be leading experts in the space when not too many other asset managers have taken that plunge yet. So definitely worth a look.
I promise you, I'm not attempting to audition for your sales team here on this podcast, but I want to boil down how I think about Eaglebrook and, and how I think about it specifically from an advisor's perspective, where we know more and more investors are investing in crypto. We know that for a fact. And if you're an advisor and you have your clients that are investing in crypto, you may or may not know about it. But if you do know about it, um, then the question is, well, how do you get involved? How do you help them manage those assets if they need that help? And that's where you come in, because this is a bit of a black hole right now. If you're an advisor and you have clients who they do want assistance with their assets, say at Coinbase or any other crypto exchange, there's not a lot of good solutions out there. And it's an area that I think advisors in general have just ignored because they don't know how to solve that problem. Is that a fair way to frame
I think
your
it's beyond
positioning?
fair. It's so fair because not only are the options only starting to emerge as more institutionally approachable. Again, thank you ETFs for ripping some of the mystery off of the space for everyone. It's that crypto accessibility has always been a little murky in the past, and centralized exchanges were there to facilitate entry into the space. And platforms like Coinbase, Gemini, Crypto.com, Robinhood, they did make it easy. They do make it easy for an individual to decide to buy crypto. One step removed from that, which is more difficult, is going and buying your own self-storage device and dabbling in DeFi. It's not for the faint of heart. Many are doing it. But that's certainly not a realm that your financial advisor is going to be ready to dig into with you at the moment. Nor do I ever imagine what it will look like when an advisor has the, SEC green light to manage a DeFi portfolio on their client's behalf, where they've got their client's self-storage device in their desk drawer. So when we look at, to your point, where we are today, I think having these other SEC regulated platforms, Eaglebrook is SEC regulated, at your disposal does mean, hey, we could probably take a look at this now. We could probably put this in front of our investment committee and not be, chased out of the room. So not only is it physically easier, I think it's also allowing advisors and their teams to feel more comfortable approaching the rest of their organizations and asking for access like this, knowing that it is important, especially when it's important to your clients. So it is getting easier. And, I think that the further we go, we'll continue to creep away from the stigma associated with discussing it with clients, which I think is unfortunately still a barrier, but the more comfortable everyone gets, the less of that we hear. So, lots of evolution in the space that's taken place, lots more to come, but all, slowly but surely, we're seeing it daily.
When you mention advisors just becoming more comfortable, the first thing that pops into my mind is compliance, right? And I want to be clear, you are not here to offer any sort of compliance advice. Let's be crystal clear on that. But I know, and I'm sure you have the same experience in talking to advisors, that some, or maybe even most, they don't want to touch crypto because they're scared to death that they're going to run afoul of some sort of compliance issue. Can you talk about that just at a high level? You touched on it there briefly, but obviously there is now a way to do this in a compliant manner, or else you wouldn't be here. But what are some of those considerations? How do you have those discussions with advisors?
Yeah, I think what we're able to see now, which is exciting, is that many investment teams, when they think about onboarding a tech platform like Eaglebrook, they're asking all the right questions. They're going to have a stack of traditional questions. Are you regulated? Who are you regulated by? Do you have SOC reports? We do. So do our underlying custodians. we're able to present a full due diligence packet to someone who is ready and willing to dig in and answer the top 10 questions compliance team's going to have about onboarding any strategy or any tech platform. I think one of the biggest considerations that can be made is, first, I already alluded to it, but who is your custodian? Where are these assets actually being held? Again, do they have SOC reports? Are they regulated? By who and where? And if you feel comfortable when all of those boxes are checked, I think you've made a huge stride in terms of what adopting crypto for your clients would look like. One of the biggest considerations when you think about how assets are stored is security. What measures are being taken to secure your clients' assets so that you can sleep at night knowing you've not just onboarded with some uh, I don't want to say rinky dinky type of platform, but what else are we able to provide? And with Eaglebrook in the picture, what's really cool is that there's an additional security layer on top of even what you'd be able to access at a retail level on either custodian's platform. So number one, if you're onboarded either on Gemini or Anchorage, assets are held in cold storage, number one, meaning they're not online, they're not sitting in a hot wallet, they're not commingled with these other customer assets touching the rest of the platform. So that's important to note first and foremost. Number two, Eaglebrook was built with, let's call it a bubble around these assets, and I'll call it a crypto withdrawal ban. You cannot elect to withdraw crypto from this platform. And I think that's really compelling. There's a whole series of steps that need to be taken for everyone to be able to validate requests for movement of crypto off this platform. And once they're taken, it can be facilitated by the custodian. But that's obviously unique. You don't have a client who's going to get a link texted to them. They won't be accidentally clicking it. They won't be getting the spamware that's asking them to change their password via email. And so by adding this layer that you're accessing as an advisor and managing on behalf of your clients, you're taking those types of vulnerabilities out of their hands. So from a compliance perspective, from a risk perspective, knowing that that's going to be the most important thing, that tends to be the scariest thing in crypto. That's something that certainly is becoming much easier to approach in the space, and it's definitely easy through our platform.
On this topic of compliance, I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on what we're seeing right now from a regulatory standpoint? I feel like the winds have clearly shifted in favor of crypto, and I'd love to hear how you think that might impact what you do and really just how advisors think about offering crypto to their clients overall.
Yeah, I think having a pro crypto administration, or so they've stated, has already provided some additional comfort to the institutional space that they're not necessarily going to lose their jobs over talking about crypto with their clients. That was a legitimate fear 5 to 6 years ago. So even if they wanted to approach the topic with clients, for fear of career risk or even reputational risk, it was not something they were going to do. And understandably. Now, I think as we move closer to having this type of administration in place, many have thought, oh, there are many camps, right? Oh, less regulation. That's not going to help anyone. I think where we're going is that we will have more, which is what we've needed, but it will be better and it will be more mindful toward sustainable and responsible growth in the space where, in the United States, maybe we could look toward being a global leader in the growth of the asset class. And so I think what we're seeing is an eye toward adoption on the wealth management side, knowing that there will be more openness and that by the end of this year, we'll certainly be able to point to more clarity on certain topics that have given advisors pause in the past, for sure.
I think that's well said. I mean, the way that I think about this is with more regulatory clarity. Obviously, once you have that, then as an advisor, it's much easier to build a compliance framework around that. It's an obvious statement, but I think that's what has been somewhat of a hindrance to advisors getting involved in the space. Clearly, not knowing exactly what the rules of engagement are, it's tough to build policies and procedures to protect both the firm and obviously the client. From investing in crypto.
100%.
You mentioned ETFs earlier, and I think I am an ETF guy. I've been for a long time. Any thoughts on the spot crypto ETF, spot Bitcoin ETF, spot Ether ETFs? It looks like because of the regulatory environment we just talked about, we could have a number of other crypto ETFs come to market here later this year. But any thoughts on those and how they compare to what Eaglebrook offers? Do you consider those competitive products, or How do you think about the spot ETFs?
It's a good question. My thinking has evolved over the past 3+ years now, and now certainly have changed since approval of these ETFs. A long time ago, I was in this camp of it's an either or. Um, because it did feel like it would be competitive. Why would you want to go buy crypto directly when it was so easy to buy through an ETF and cheaper? But I think now that it's available and you see what other wrappers you can access as a serious investor, as someone who's investing on your client's behalf, it's less of an either or and more of a both and. You can certainly build a portfolio with both, and for a variety of reasons that you'd use different wrappers for any other asset class for your clients. Maybe someone wants to work with lower minimums and they're super fee sensitive. They just know that within a specified time period, they want to track the price of Bitcoin and sell out. They don't really care if when they're selling, they have cash in hand or crypto in hand. And maybe they're still just not so knowledgeable about the space. I think it's a great option. It's also very easy to put into an IRA, for example. But when you compare that to something like an SMA, you will have clients who want to put a little more to work. You will have clients who understand the differences between the ETFs and the SMAs. Three of those, high points I mentioned earlier, which is the direct investment, diversifying, and the ability to optimize taxes. And so when you're starting with a client where those types of things matter more, you're going to have this as an additional option, and I think it's a good one. But from an investment perspective, or rather from an onboarding perspective, one thing I think the ETF has done well for the space, and especially in a way that benefits the SMAs and platforms offering them, is that many investment committees had the ETF in front of them as a way to introduce crypto to, the committee approving the onboarding of things like this. And when they're putting a policy together, in many cases, it's required them to look more broadly at what they're offering. Were you going to continue drafting this policy throughout the year? Or was it more efficient to draft the policy with a variety of products in mind? And so when they do that and they know the additional vehicles that are available outside of just ETFs, we have a lot of really positive conversations when we explain, A, this is compliant, B, here's how easy it is to use, and C, obviously, here are the three benefits associated with investing directly. So I think it's definitely not either or anymore. I think they're very complementary, and I think complementary to a team who's drafting a broader crypto policy at this point.
Yeah, I've said for a long time, and I've said it numerous times on this podcast, that I have always viewed the spot ETFs as a bridge between TradFi and DeFi. And the idea here being that, sure, are there some investors in TradFi who are just looking to play the price of, say, Bitcoin and Ether? Of course. But there's another, I think, fairly substantial subset that this is the way that they're going to learn about crypto. And I'll give you a really good example. If you look last week, we received this news that BlackRock was now including their iShares Bitcoin ETF, IBIT, in a couple of their model portfolios that they offer to advisors. And what's interesting about that is, along with that, they had a fairly in-depth write-up about the rationale for investing in Bitcoin and how they view Bitcoin. Well, guess who's going to read that? It's going to be advisors and people who are managing money on behalf of clients. And to me, that's a good example of how the ETFs are helping to educate the space. So I'm a proponent, clearly, of ETFs, but longer term, I would like to see everybody just interact directly in the crypto ecosystem. I think that's the long-term game. That's where we're heading. But I think the ETFs can serve as a valuable education tool in the interim. And I think they'll continue to serve as that as we have additional products come to market. And I guess on that note, just before I let you go, it's funny, you and I were talking about education offline and just the challenge around crypto education, that there's still a tremendous amount of skepticism from advisors, and I would say TradFi in general. How do you think about that? Because I think with that skepticism, some advisors and some in TradFi, they're just ignoring crypto altogether. And I see some risks in that, but how can the industry help with financial advisor and TradFi crypto education?
It's a tricky one. I mean, it would require that heads of research feel knowledgeable enough to start introducing more education internally on this topic, and even that is a challenge. There are platforms that exist that have been created specifically for advisors and providing that crypto education. One is Rick Edelman's DAC FP. It's really popular. Another is Adam Blumberg's Interaccess. I've heard really fantastic feedback on both. DAC FP provides certification to advisors, showing clients and others that they've gone through the process of learning about crypto. So I think that's a really interesting angle. Interaccess takes an even deeper dive into more technical terms as far as DeFi and other aspects of on-chain activity go. It doesn't have to stop there. I think that now more than ever, there are so many resources online if you want to do your own diligence on the asset class, whether through CoinDesk, for example, whether it's through groups like that or just any type of asset management content from those who have decided to be leaders in the space. You can find it on BlackRock. You can find it on Bitwise. Bitwise, for example, has amazing content given their expertise in the space through Matt Hogan. And I think it's really well written, really easy to understand. And I think many have just been able to contextualize the space in the terms that financial advisors expect to approach with. So there are a lot of good options, and I don't think you actually have to dig that deep anymore to find a good starting place.
Well, and clearly you are one of those excellent options as well.
Yeah, give me a call anytime. We could talk about crypto, SMAs, whatever anybody wants. I would look forward to that.
You hit on a few of the resources that I like. Certainly Matt Hogan and the Bitwise team, they do a fantastic job. You mentioned Interaccess and Adam Bloomberg. I've gone through actually his course, his program. Nice. Thought it was fantastic. But hopefully that education will continue to proliferate. I'm hoping to help with that to a certain degree. But Kristen, such a great discussion this week. I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
That was Kristen Mirabella, Head of Partnerships at Eaglebrook. Hope everyone enjoyed this episode of Crypto Prime. Please give us a review or hit that like button wherever you're listening or watching. I always appreciate the support, and I'll see you again next week.
Crypto Prime is hosted by Nate Geraci, president of OTR Media LLC. Nate is also president of the investment advisory firm The ETF Store. While OTR Media LLC and the ETF Store are related by common ownership, they are separate and distinct entities, and anything discussed on this program should not be construed as an official statement by the ETF Store. This program is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice. Investing in crypto assets involves substantial risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any past performance figures discussed are not necessarily indicative of future results. Visit CryptoPrimePodcast.com for more information.